Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with an Are You In? But this isn't just any old Are You In? This is my 100th Are You In? I'm really happy to be able to say that because that means I've been putting out a lot of material over the last year and change, and I'm glad that I've been so consistent on it. Even if the days haven't been consistent, I'm glad I've been able to put out a lot of videos for you guys. If you've watched every single one of these, or if you just started watching these, thank you so much for your support. I hope that you got some new music to listen to out of these and have at least enjoyed my insight, and I hope to get you to watch more videos in the future. But enough schmaltz, let's get down to it. So if you've watched my last Are You In on the Vampire Weekend album, you know that I'm looking at another indie rock album, and one from another indie rock staple from the last few decades. This album is going to be The National's newest album entitled I Am Easy to Find. Now, The National is an indie rock slash art rock slash alt rock slash folk rock band from Cincinnati, Ohio. Members including Matt Berninger on lead vocals, Aaron Dessner on guitar, bass, keyboards, harmonica, mandolin, and backing vocals, Bryce Dessner on guitar, keyboards, piano, and backing vocals, Brian Devendorf on drums, percussion, and backing vocals, and Scott Devendorf on bass, guitar, and backing vocals. Previous albums include National in 2001, Sad Songs for Dirty Lovers in 2003, Alligator in 2005, Boxer in 2007, High Violet in 2010, Trouble Will Find Me in 2013, and Sleep Well Beasts in 2017. Now, this is another love-hate band for me. Trouble Will Find Me was the first album of theirs that I listened to, and I remember listening to it because that was around the time where I started hunkering down and tried to make my top 50 list, because I remembered reading Rolling Stone's top 50 list and always disagreeing with them. This particular year, I believe Trouble Will Find Me was like their 9th favorite album of the year or something like that, but Trouble Will Find Me was a hugely successful album and one that a lot of music critics enjoyed. I, on the other hand, did not really enjoy it at all. I didn't find it really memorable. I remember not liking Matt Berninger's style of voice, so it pushed me off of that album. However, I remember around 2017, I was listening on the radio, particularly 92.9. If you are from Massachusetts, which you know that is the alt-rock station, I remember listening to a new single and really enjoying it and wondering who the band was. The song itself was called The System Only Dreams in Total Dark, which was from Sleep Well Beasts, their latest album at the time. It made me want to listen to it, and honestly, I remember enjoying it much more than the previous album. I think there was a lot more life to the album, and the lower moments, the ones that were more vulnerable, felt good because of the energy on a lot of these songs, like The System, Dreams, and Total Dark. However, I wasn't still the biggest fan of that album. I put it in like the late 40s in terms of my top 50 list. I enjoyed it enough to have it on like the outskirts of my top 50, but it wasn't like my favorite album of the year by any means. So when I heard that they were putting out a new album, I was excited to hear that, and I was hoping that the positive momentum would continue going, and honestly, it has. Now, going back to Matt Berninger's voice for a minute, after I listened to this album, I read some of the reviews, and there was one particular review, I don't remember who it was, it might have been Pitchfork, but they talked about what camp you were in for National, and usually it came down to whether or not you could tolerate Matt Berninger's voice, and that was like it hit the nail on the head for me. I think a lot of the times when I've listened to The National, I don't enjoy Matt Berninger's voice a whole heck of a lot because I don't think there's a lot of emotional range or a actual physical range. What I liked so much about The System, Dreams, and Total Dark is because on the chorus, Matt Berninger's voice was a little bit higher and it seemed like more power than usual. To me, Matt Berninger kind of sings a little bit lazily, which can work on some ballad ideas to his benefit because he's able to emote in a way that feels more passionate than what his voice usually does do, at least in my opinion. However, this particular album counteracts that in a very interesting way, and it's a very simple yet really effective way. Basically, they have a lot of different female artists featuring on this album. A majority of the songs feature Gail and Dorsey, who is someone who used to sing with David Bowie on particular songs. But you also have Eve Owen, Diane Sorrell, Mina Tyndall, Lisa Hannigan, Sharon Van Etten, and Kate Stables. All of these people are on a majority of these songs. And what I love about it is not only does it give more depth to a lot of these songs, it also gives a new voice and a new energy to a lot of these songs. Because first off, a lot of these singers sing beautifully. Galen Dorsey has such a sultry and beautiful alto, contralto voice, and a lot of these people have a very low voice to be able to complement Matt Berninger in such an interesting and unique way. I think also a lot of these singers do blend very well with him. So when he comes in, it works phenomenally. With that happening, Matt Berninger doesn't necessarily become the focal point of every one of these songs. And those who suffer from Matt fatigue, you can breathe a sigh of relief because that gives you more space without just his vocals. When that happens, you get a lot of phenomenal songs. And also why these pairings work so well is because a lot of these songs have to deal with marriage and finding peace and comfort in a significant other, or the inverse where things are falling apart because there's a lack of communication. But a lot of these songs do have to deal with the stagnant ideas of life and wondering if being in a marriage with someone, like if forever, is really the best thing, but also being able to find peace within the other. One of my favorite songs being the title track, I Am Easy to Find, where it's talking about someone changing throughout life, but even when people change for the negative, they're able to find peace and comfort with their other, because that person is easy to find no matter when things get bleak or things get tough. Kate Stables is phenomenal on this song, and the melody is beautiful as well. There's some great lines talking about like there's millions of battles that you'll lose anyways, but you'll still be there for that person even when you've hit that millionth battle that you've lost. Or a song like The Pull of You, which features Lisa Hannigan and Sharon Van Etten. This one talks about the twists and turns of life and how sometimes life has a funny way of connecting two people in it, even if they're not always together, but eventually coming back together, kind of like soulmates. Oblivion's also talking about pushing the limits of a marriage and how far one is willing to bend or break, but still being there for the other throughout thick and thin. Now, those two aren't necessarily the most interesting arrangement-wise, and do suffer from some problems. The Pull You suffering from kind of the stream of conscious part that just doesn't really work for me, and Oblivion's just not being the most an interesting arrangement, but the lyrics themselves make up for those shortcomings. Now, I'll also say, on the detriment level, the first half of the album isn't the most interesting. Quiet Light, Roman Holiday, Oblivion's, The Pull of You, even Hey Rosie are some of the weaker songs on the album to me. There are 3 songs that are basically interludes, which you have Her Father in the Pool, Underwater, and Dust Swims in a Strange Light. Dust Swims in a Strange Light is one of the longer of these interludes. It's about 3 minutes, but I consider it an interlude because half of it has lyrics and half of it is this like build up to the next song. Also, it kind of suffers to me because it's just a chorus. So this is one of the 3 songs that the Brooklyn Youth Chorus is a part of, and they're mostly on the interludes, but this is one that just is a little bit too weird for me because it's a bunch of people singing one particular note and it's kind of boring. Taking those 3 away, your 13th song, your 12th best song, your 10th, and your 11th are all in that first half, The Pull of You, Oblivion's, Roman Holiday, and Quiet Light. But again, I think those still have awesome lyrics to balance out the shortcomings. Even Quiet Light, where it actually has some of my favorite lyrics, where it's talking about being lonely after a breakup and trying to live in loneliness, and loneliness not being the problem, but just wondering how long that loneliness has to last. Even finding little things in everyday life that brings you back to the person that you were with for so long. However, once we get past that first half, you do get a lot of really interesting songs and ones where the features work so much better. Whereas Her Head, it has some fantastic harmonies. It has Gail and Dorsey, it has Aaron Dessner, and it has Eve Owens on top of Matt Berninger eventually coming in with his own part. And his part isn't as strong, but the connection between everybody else, the harmonies there, it is just beautiful. Some great harmonies on this particularly interesting arrangement. Then you get to my favorite song on the album, and this is interesting because my two favorite songs on the album actually feature more Matt Berninger than everybody else. Not in Kansas is this very folky kind of song. It doesn't have much into instrumentation other than some guitar for the most part, and then some piano during the parts with Galen Dorsey, Lisa Hannigan, and Kate Stables. But what I think works so well is the stream of conscious lyrics in this particular song, where it's dealing with the current state of the world and how everything is so much more hard now and how things were simpler back then. The cool thing about this is Aaron Dessner sent the music to Matt Berninger, and Matt Berninger had so much love for this song that he immediately wrote a song that had 10 stanzas, and they actually took out a good chunk of this, but still left enough for a 6-minute song. And I think a lot of it's really, really interesting. Just the stream of consciousness, and also just how he emotes on this song. It's very low in his voice, and it feels like he's, really suffering through this. His words are tense. His voice is a little bit weak at times, not knowing how to get through these times. But also then there's these parts with all the women on there, and the harmonies are simplistic, but they work so well and counterbalance to what's happening beforehand. So that's my first favorite song, and I'll go back to my next favorite song later. So Far So Fast, Hairpin Turns are also on the latter half of this album, and both of them are phenomenal. So Far So Fast has Lisa Hannigan on here, and what I love about this is she in turn also goes very low in her voice, and it works so well with Matt Berninger eventually when he comes in. And then Hairpin Turns is another one with Gala and Dorsey, and this is another beautiful one with her that works really well with Matt. Another really cool part of this is the melody itself is very sparse, so the rhythms are really interesting and spaced out, and you're hanging on a word. So that, to me, makes this song so interesting. From there, you still do have one other weaker song on here, Rylan, one of the more upbeat songs, but isn't the most interesting arrangement-wise. But after all of that, you get to my second favorite song on the album, and the closing song, which is Light Years. Another very simplistic song on this album, which has very flowing piano lines, and it does feature just mostly Matt. But it is a beautiful melody and a great way of ending this particular album. Now, comparatively to the last album, the music is a little bit more minimal. There's a little bit more electronic work, and there aren't as many songs that are really upbeat. I mean, the first song on the album, You Had Your Soul With You, another highlight on this album in terms of just having the energy so great at the beginning, and there's a lot of really cool electronic ideas in there. That one, Where's Her Head, Ryland, Quiet Light, those are the more energetic songs on this album. Everything else, it falls kind of on the more minimal and more chilling and haunting part of the spectrum. I think most of them work very well. I would say the only problem, other than a lot of the weaker songs being on the first half of this album, is that it is a 16-track CD. It is almost an hour's long of material, so you got a lot to work with. And unfortunately, because having a lot of the songs on the first half not being as interesting, it does take a minute for things to finally click. For me, the first time around, honestly, other than You Had Your Soul With You, it clicked with I Am Easy to Find. And luckily from there, the rest of it was really interesting to listen to. I think there's a lot of very vulnerable yet poignant moments because of the lyrics, because of the lyrical material, because of the interactions with all these singers, and again, because when Matt is alone on songs like mostly I'm Not in Kansas and Light Years, those actually mean something. You're not fatigued by his voice. Everyone around him builds him up to something better than what he usually is. To me, this is the best one of those albums that I've listened to, and one that I would definitely go back to again, on the caveat of maybe starting halfway through. To the benefit of the weaker songs, there are better lyrics, and I think there's a lot of really great and poignant lyrics on this album, all dealing with relationships and how they fall apart and how they come back together and life itself. If you have been looking for a little bit more of emotional depth from the National, or if you been wanting to get into the National but having no problem getting into it because of Matt's voice, this is probably the best way of getting in. Know that a lot of these songs are going to be very minimalist. A lot of the arrangements have a lot of electronic tinges in there. There is some percussion, but usually doesn't come into the later half of the songs, and when there is percussion, it usually is on the faster, more energetic songs, which there are only a few of them. But if you can get into minimalist ideas, which honestly to me work very well because it lets the lyrics and the melodies speak for themselves. If you can get into that, then you are going to have a great time with this album. This is the end of my 100th Are You In? Thank you so much for watching. If you like or hate this album, let me know why. Share this with your friends. Let me know of other albums that you would like me to review from this year. And subscribe to my channel. That's the biggest thing you can do so you can watch the next 100. So this Sunday, I'll be back with another Are You In? Another one that I have to deep dive into, but one that's going to be fun nonetheless. So until then, this is the Music Fan, and I'm signing off.